first and foremost, thank you again for being here. I want to welcome everyone who is here to the leadership breakfast that we've been hosting now. Stan and I were just talking. We've been hosting these for 18 years, and this is only the second time that we've done this virtually. Though I'm looking forward to, getting everybody together and networking in person at some point in time. This gives us a broader reach, allows us the opportunity to, reach more across state lines and have people attend who may not ordinarily be able to attend. But the networking piece is certainly a big part of why we started it. But more importantly, and I think the bigger reason people are here today is because another keystone as to why we started this is the educational piece. We plan these to be informative and to provide all of our attendees with a chance to hear from prominent and successful leaders who can provide useful insights that everyone can walk away with and implement in their own environments. So to that end, I would encourage everyone, please use the Q&A function. Please feel free to ask questions, interrupt at any point in time with a question that you have or that's weighing on you. Don't be discouraged or don't be afraid to do that. But today, I'm delighted to have one of my newest friends join us for today's session. You all received the quick bio that I sent out on Stan, but allow me a quick minute to introduce him, and then we'll get right into our conversation. So Stan Middleman is the founder and CEO of Freedom Mortgage Corporation, which he started in 1990. He currently has over 7,000 employees and 100 locations nationwide. In 2009, when others in his industry failed to survive the recession, Stan actually grew his company to become a market leader in VA mortgage and government-insured lending. Freedom Mortgage is also known for their involvement in philanthropic efforts throughout the country, and Stan is a recipient in 2019 of Ian Wise Entrepreneur of the Year Award. One of the primary things, and I know Stan, when I originally sent this out, one of the things that really stood out to me is this year, and for many years, you've been consistently voted by your employees and your executives on your team as a top-rated CEO, and specifically this year as a top-rated CEO among others in your handling of what's going on with the pandemic. So Stan Middleman, welcome to the Leadership Breakfast. Thank you for being here.
Oh, thanks for having me, Alan. And it would be very difficult to get out to Phoenix, so it's a pleasure to be able to take advantage of our new world order. Here I am in Florida, and you guys are in Phoenix or in other spots around the country, and yet we're all together here today, and that's kind of cool. So thanks for having me.
Absolutely, absolutely. So during these unprecedented times, Stan, you've been ranked again incredibly highly by your employees as to how you're managing things through the pandemic. We all know that this period is unlike anything that we've ever seen. But for someone in your industry to go through what you went through in 2007 to 2009, when other mortgage companies, when others in your industry were just getting crushed, this period obviously is not having the same effect or same impact on your industry specifically. But how much of what you learned then have you been able to apply to what's going on today?
Well, it's the same fear, right? So I was afraid then, I was afraid now. I don't think that was much different. Both times I wanted to cry, but had to face the reality that tomorrow morning I had to wake up and do my job anyway. So kind of what was the point? But there's really, from my perspective, it's very different. The situation that we faced during the financial crisis was an asset correction era. We were coming off a period of prolonged growth, asset inflation, value of assets had gone way up, and we were in the downturn hit with a terrifically large correction in asset values. And that was an entirely different environment than the one we're in today. Today, we're in an environment where we were operating at full employment, but we hadn't really totally recovered. In fact, asset values are not really dissimilar to what they were at the point of the crisis. So we haven't had the growth in assets. I like to think that, and I think history will prove me out, that the past peak becomes the next trough. So I think we're kind of at the bottom of asset growth, and we're just going to start to grow from here. And that the current spot we're at is where we will grow from. And we haven't even approached our peak. So there's a big difference in terms of the actual economy and the nature of the event. Another big difference, I think, and it's not really exactly answering your question, so bear with me, I'll kind of get there. Another big difference is the world we live in is really different. Technology today is vastly different than the technology of that vintage. If this crisis that we're facing today, and what this is almost a social crisis more than it is an economic crisis, not that there aren't hard times and not that there haven't been economic ramifications, but this crisis has been, to the very fabric of our society, has been torn. Not just economically, but emotionally and intellectually. We could never have responded to the nature of this crisis 10 years ago. The things that we were able to do today that we take for granted, like this, right? A Zoom call, meeting face to face, even though you're nowhere near each other, could have been done then, but not as readily. More importantly, the nature of the internet was different then. So the foundation or the infrastructure that we leveraged was not as widespread and not nearly as fast. If you remember what internet was like in 2007 and 2008, it's not today's iteration. Today's internet supports a much more robust activity. So I think the big difference is that infrastructure. And it's allowed us to go from a situation where we were in work Thursday afternoon and we were in a meeting and we were on a conference call in 4 conference rooms across the country, but live for a quarter of the people in each of the room, right? So there were 30 people on the call. Thursday afternoon, Friday we shut down. Tuesday, we opened back up remotely, and 98% of our personnel were operating remotely from home and doing their job. And not only doing it, but we went on to record record months in April, May, June, July, August, and September, to the point where we went from doing about $5 billion a month in new originations in February to doing about 15 billion a month today. And that leaves us about, I guess, 4th or 5th largest mortgage lender in the country behind names like Quicken, Wells, and Chase. So it's a pretty familiar group of brands that we operate in. The thing that we do is we're a little more niche driven. We kind of aim at the vet that I don't think gets nearly the attention. We're the largest VA lender in the country, and the underserved. We're also the largest FHA lender in the country. So government loans that help the underserved or the protected class, VA, FHA, USDA for rural properties, are kind of our specialty, and we are we're double the next closest competitor. Just dramatically more. I think we're 3 times what Quicken does. So when you think about our particular segment of our industry, we are far and away leaders, and that's really driven based on the specificity of our technology and the infrastructure that we run it on. So, today is much different from the crisis that we faced in 2008. Now, both of them were really scary of the potential economic ramifications, the potential liquidity event. Because you faced in both instances, first you started with full employment, then you went to an inverted yield curve where short-term money was more expensive than long-term money, and that almost always leads to a recession and a correction in the employment. But the big difference this time is that you didn't have inflated value of assets that needed to correct. So the depth of the economic impact has not been nearly as severe, and that's why the markets rebounded so quickly, because
Right.
you didn't have an asset correction. So that's kind of the big similarities and differences that we faced. But I think the part where I wanted to cry both times was probably the most common thread.
Now, and quick question on the fact that you're number one in the underserved community. Did you start Freedom Mortgage that way, or did you just kind of find that niche and create the technology to serve that niche?
Well, remember we started 30 years ago, so technology was a pencil and an eraser. And then we got a line of memory on our typewriter. So when I started, we weren't very technology oriented. But we did start with a fundamental premise, and that was that we wanted to help people have their ability to build wealth through their largest personal asset, their home, be enhanced. So our mission is to foster home ownership and help people leverage their home into wealth. And that's always been our focus. And when that's your mission, that mission just lends itself to the underserved and protected classes and building futures for the young people to protect our freedoms. It's just a natural fit. And even though
That's
we
great.
didn't aim at those folks originally, our mission led us to those folks.
That's great. We have a question from one of the attendees, and I want to encourage everyone, please do go to the Q&A and ask questions. But Gary asked this question. He said, first of all, thank you for investing time with us this morning. As you mentioned, you wanted to cry in this new economy and reality. Can you walk us through the specific actions you had to take to engage, motivate, and ensure transparency with your leadership team and associates across your organization?
Sure. Well, so I think that was crucial. So what was the really big change? Well, you didn't have people on site where you didn't casually lead. There was no casual mentoring. There was no water cooler conversation. You didn't get to see long faces. You didn't get to anticipate the issues. So I identified early that the issue was going to be tethering. A big part of my job is keeping the corporate interests and the self-interests of the employees aligned. And I made that my mission, to make sure that we had a common enemy, a common goal, a common outcome. So we made the disease, which is clearly the enemy, not the way the disease was handled, not the way people saw the disease, but the actual disease itself as the common enemy, that we all had a common cause together. It was the disease keeping us inside. It was the disease keeping us apart. We had a common cause. We wanted to help homeowners. We were facing a situation where people were out of work, and we actually had to make the mortgage payments for a lot of these folks that were underserved. There was about as many as 30,000 calls coming in today of people looking to take advantage of the CARES Act. And we had to support our customers and actually make the mortgage payments for those people that were afraid that they couldn't and opted not to under the CARES Act. So we had to handle that. Plus, at the same time, we had interest rates coming to all-time lows. So we have 1.5 million customers whose mortgage is that we service. So the ones that couldn't pay needed our help, and the ones that could pay wanted a new mortgage and get the rate lower. So we had this tsunami of activity, both of helping people that couldn't pay and helping people lower their payments, all happening at the same time. So we had our origination volume go up and our servicing department under siege simultaneously. So we had common goals of helping all of these people with their mortgages and help make their payments. And at the same time, helping all the other folks that could afford to make their payments have lower payments so that they could ride out the storm of this event. So we had common goals, we had common enemy, and we could unite together to fight these foes and to pursue these dreams. And then I met every week. I did a video and I spoke to the entire organization. And our organization today is about 13,000 people. About 9,000 of them are full-time employees today. So we've added a lot of people since you got your stats.
Wow.
Plus, we have contractors in different parts of the world amounting to about 4,000 folks. So, you know, I personally spoke through this medium once a week and shared my thoughts. And I think they're on YouTube if you ever wanted to just, you know, catch some of the flavor of that. But the idea was to keep our interests aligned. Let the employees know that I cared about them. Let them know that the most important thing that was paramount to me was their safety and security, and that we weren't going to have them in the office, and that we were going to work remote, and we were going to continue to work remote, and we weren't going to make them come into the office and put themselves at risk. You know, we had 2% of the population that had to go in and handle the money that was coming in the door and handle the mortgage notes and make sure they got into the appropriate securities. But aside from that, a couple of hundred people that had to do those jobs, and they were spaced out over 500,000 square feet of office space. So there was plenty of social distancing. Aside from those few jobs, everybody was working from home. So the big thing was to one, for me to tell them how I really felt and try and give them tips. Make sure you create me time, make sure you get exercise, make sure that you get plenty of sleep, make sure that you turn off the computer and walk away, make sure that you get up and go for a walk every couple of hours and take a deep breath. Make sure you don't get swallowed up by all the work we have, because we have all these customers that are depending on us. And then I rewarded them too. We created, instead of doing reviews this year, we gave everybody a 10% increase in pay as a bonus, and didn't do reviews, but we gave everybody a bonus so that they didn't have to worry about their review or how they're performing. And we also had the ability, because of our technology, to monitor how long each person was on and how many hours they were on and the issues that they were facing, how many people they spoke to, what their activity levels were. So by monitoring the activities, we were able to verify the work. And the proof's in the pudding. To go from $5 billion in new loans in a month to $15 billion in new loans in a month is not an easy task. So I know everybody was working. They didn't really have a choice. The outcome supports the fact that if somebody was getting away with something, it was few and far between, because everybody was busy. But to keep their mental health straight so that it would be sustainable, because this is going to be, it's a long haul. So, unemployment went up, interest rates come down. I don't think we're through this yet. I think the change in leadership in Washington is going to continue low interest rates, and the demand for housing will continue. There's not enough inventory, property values will rise. Interest rates are going to remain low. There's going to be a lot of refinancing going on. I wouldn't be surprised if there were some housing incentives come out of government. So we're going to be very engaged going forward. So we didn't want to burn everybody out too. And we also had to do a lot of training. That's one of the things that really surprised me the most, was the ability to get people onboarded, trained, equipped, trained in the equipment, get them oriented to the company, and get them tethered into our culture. The management, the IT group, everybody was just unbelievably great.
Yeah.
I can't tell you. We did a whole segment 1 month. We did a segment called Heroes of Freedom, and we honored a different person every day and gave away $1,000 bonus to each of the people that got honored, and did a video and broadcast them across the company. And we've been doing a lot of things like that. When we had that social unrest, we did a thing called Humans of Freedom. And now we're highlighting the journey different people took to get into their jobs, and talking about the diversity and the wide range of folks that we have. This week for Veterans Week, we did videos every day honoring the vets that work at Freedom. So we're trying to do a lot of tethering.
That's fantastic. That's fantastic. I think you answered one of the other questions that we have right now from the attendees. Do you think the housing market experience has massive pent-up demand this year? I think your answer is yes to that.
Off the charts.
Yeah.
I think we're going to see a couple of years of real value increase. And it's not going to be a straight line up, but I think you'll see it go up in steps. And we're not really anywhere near the top of the value chart. Now, remember, when values of assets get overinflated, they correct. And that's not something new. John Adams dealt with that at the second president of the United States. So the reality is there's going to be booms and busts, and there's going to be asset correction. So my expectation is through the early part of this decade, maybe as late as 24, we'll see property values go up. If you see them continue to go up past 24, I think you can expect a real correction as we get later into the decade. So I'm hoping we're able to be capable of constraining and balancing our demand and price, but we never have in the past, so I would be surprised if we did this time.
Yeah, perfect. Another question that we have, and I encourage everyone, please pose your questions in the Q&A. Mark is thanking you for your time again this morning. How do you think about fostering and enabling innovation at Freedom?
Well, I think we spend a boatload of money on it every day, so hopefully we're doing some of that. Actually, what we've done, the growth that we've experienced, the number of people that did this work was proportionately much smaller than the group that did the work in the last go around. So I think we hit our peak in 2016 or 15 of about 5 billion in a month, which is about what our floor was this time, right? But when we got to $5 billion for the first time, the ceiling was shaking, and you could feel the dust coming down, and the pieces falling out of the ceiling. You could hear the pipes rattling in the walls. The floors were shaking. We really strained to get to 5 billion, and we did that with about 7,000 people. So to get from 5 billion to 15 billion with 9,000 full-time people is a really big improvement. So the improvement is really indicative of how good the technology is. Our ability to data mine, manage, maintain, and retain customers, the quality of the data, the accessibility of that data, our customer maintenance, our customer satisfaction, our employee satisfaction. All of that stems from big changes in technology over the last 5 or 6 years. We've been investing for a long time in that, and we continue to invest very, very large dollars. I think we must spend in excess of $150 million a year in IT. So it's not a little number. It's not big compared to some places, but it's really big compared to others. And it's a big number compared to me. So from what I'm used to, it seems like it's a lot of money. And truth is, we're going to even invest more. We really think that the customer has expectations that our industry has been slow to meet because of the government involvement. The government is very involved in housing, and particularly housing finance. And it is really restrictive in terms of the technology that we have to interface with. So they want us on antiquated technology because it's fungible to their needs. So the government kind of is encouraging, to a certain extent, the use of old technology, only because it fits so nicely with their technology and it makes the assets more fungible. So most innovation sits on these green screen kind of technologies. And if you see, even somebody like Quicken, who claims to be a big innovative leader, they're on the same operating platform we are. And we're just all building on top of it. Chase, who spends way more than we do, on the same operating platform. It's just what we build on top of it. So I think that's an ongoing process as we try to improve, to embrace the customer expectations, which are far greater than our ability to fulfill them. So we can't quite keep up with unregulated industries that do whatever the hell they want and are able to please the customers quite the way we'd like to, because we're a very regulated industry and we have great responsibilities to the government, which we take very seriously.
Right. Well, you talked a lot about technology, and this is a group of a lot of technologists. So we've got a few technology questions for you right now.
Don't get me in too much trouble.
I know. I don't think you're going to go too far in the weeds, and you just tell me if we are. Top 3 technology investments you think made the biggest difference in your vertical?
Well, clearly, process improvement, the BPM type stuff, CRM kind of stuff, the activity that streamlines process. So the process improvement pieces were huge. That's probably, and that's just an ongoing thing. So when you talk about things like AI, all the process improvement tools have been enormously important. The data extraction, mining, manipulation has been huge. That's really, if process improvements 1A would be data mining and the ability to understand and sort the activities. The biggest other initiative is something that I've been trying to get done for 5 or 6 years. I had a vision many years ago when I first saw the frozen yogurt store, where you go in and you make your own frozen yogurt in a cup, and then they weigh it and charge you. I thought that mortgages should work that way. I couldn't understand why they don't, where the customer waits on himself and then they come to the counter and check out. We'd love to see that happen. So the empowerment of the consumer is probably the next biggest initiative. So a lot of the process improvement we've done has been with an eye towards the consumer being able to self-serve. And that's, we're not particularly unique with that ambition, but we're pretty serious about it. And it's one that I'd really like to see us continue to grow and make a big part of where we're going.
Excellent. Now, does the AI piece, those things that you're implementing, does that mean less employees long-term for you? Does that mean, if it's more of a self-service model, what about the number of people that you have?
So that's it, people are interesting. First of all, I thought that I was going to make a transition. And so when I was speaking to you before we started, you were telling me about the second mountain. When I came into this business, it was a sales organization, right? We started as a sales organization, selling products to consumers, and then having a back office fulfill it. Then we developed credit expertise, and we became uh, a credit-driven environment as we entered into that crisis. And credit began to drive the bus, and our expertise had to be greater in credit than it was in sales. Um, and every time we made these changes, from a sales organization to a credit organization, and finally from a sales organization in general, in a broad sense, to an asset management organization. So balance sheet light, sales, selling the product out the door to someone else. That was our first mountain. Our second mountain was the creation of assets with those products that we sold, retaining them, creating receivables out of those mortgages that we created, securitizing them and running off the cash flows. That became our second mountain. I think we're headed towards the third mountain in your example, and that really comes to that self-serve, and people are messy, right? So when you manage people, it's just messy. You have to cut the gum that Johnny put into Jane's hair out without her screaming and her mother writing a note home to the teacher. The kids can't fight on the playground. There's a lot of things happen with people. So it's nicer to manage assets, but in reality, what I found is none of those things happen. People don't become less important. They just become capable of doing more. So instead of ending up with less people, we end up with more people, and the amount of productivity that we have goes up. So what I think happens is the volume of people that we'll have will continue to grow, but the volumes that we'll produce will lead themselves to industry consolidation. So do I think there'll be less people in the industry? I do. Do I think there'll be more people at Freedom Mortgage as we continue to grow and gobble up market share? I think we're seeing a consolidation in our industry, and that will persist. And in all industries, there's winners and losers. And I think that technology will allow the winners to lead the way, because at the end of the day, you want to be the low-cost provider. And it doesn't become an equation of more or less people. It becomes more or less productive people. So the
Right.
key to leverage the productivity of your personnel and become the low-cost producer, which allows growth in personnel and huge mushroom cloud growth through the organization.
Yeah. I'm going to get to as many questions that are coming in as we can, but there are a lot of questions piling up here, Stan. What is your forecast for a company like Home Depot, or the next 2 to 3 years? I mean, I can only assume based on what you've already said.
Well, Home Depot's been unbelievable, right? So do it yourself is all the craze, right? So people are home, they have a lot of time on their hands. The world shut down. I guess it's a good time to do a project. Let's change the backsplash. Let's build an addition, whatever you're going to do. A lot of fixer-up activity, a lot of home improvement. Value of houses are going up, so it makes sense for people to put money in their home. I would be bullish on Home Depot, just because it's kind of the time. Will that go on indefinitely? Probably not.
You brought up the example earlier of
I
your
hope we get to go
onboarding,
back to an
like
office and work and go to do these things live someday. So hopefully everybody won't have a
with
lot
you.
of time on their hands with nothing to do. They'll have other alternatives, like go to the movies or go to a ball game.
I want baseball back. I want baseball fans back for sure. The approach that you mentioned earlier about onboarding and the fact that you're able to train and you're able to do this all without offices, how long do you see that working, and do you see that as possibly just the new way? that people are just going, or companies are going to adopt that as the new way of onboarding?
Well, I don't know about companies, but I can talk about me. So we haven't added any office space, and we've, dramatically increased the size of our workforce since March. We're adding, hundreds, if not thousands, of people a month. And the truth is, I see us as a company without limits. We're not limited by floors and walls and ceilings and parking spaces. The joy of this growth spurt is I haven't had a single conversation about parking spaces. I haven't heard anybody complain that they park too far from the office. It takes them 10 minutes to walk. It's horrible in the rain. It's awful when it's too hot. People in Phoenix complain it's hot in the summer and you can't go touch your car, and I couldn't find a space that was covered. People in New Jersey can't get to their office because of the snow and the rain and the ice. And that's probably what prepared us to be successful in a remote environment, because we had all of this, crisis preparation, all of this, undesirable activities that impact your business, disaster recovery stuff all in place. So we've practiced working from home for snowstorms or hurricanes or blizzards or floods. So we've got people, or mudslides in California. So we've got people we're ready to work from home all across the country, because they have different problems everywhere. So we have this disaster recovery in place, and we just hit the switch for everybody all at once. It was really quite remarkable. And what that's done, it's like moving the ceiling on a stadium to let the fresh air and sunlight in. It's unbelievable. We have no limitations on how much we can grow. To me, it's one of the most exciting things to come out of this, is that there's no limitations physically on our growth. It's only how good are we able to get people trained and tethered and culture coordinated in our business. And we're going to get better and better at it as time goes by. And by the way, there's some people that should go back and work from the office, that need to get their kids in childcare, that need to come into the office. There are some people that really need that social interaction. And I'm hoping that the new world will become one where offices become more hotels of space, where people bring their laptops in and they're in 3 days a week and not 5, or 2 days a week, or not at all, but they'll be able to work at their optimal capability. Because we know what they're doing, we can manage them, we can successfully organize and do our work. So that's not an issue. And that was a real fear at one time, right? At one time, we didn't know people would actually behave appropriately working from home. We didn't know that they would show up, or that they would turn their computers on, or that they would do what they had to do. That was a big mystery. And I think we've solved that mystery. So it's pretty exciting and fun, actually.
It is. It's very much so. I agree. Yeah, that is one of the best things to come out of this. I agree with that. Another technology question, and just say this is too in the weeds, if it is, but the pandemic has created a huge surge in public cloud spend. Has this trend influenced your own technology strategy at Freedom?
Yeah. To me, that's just an expense, right? So for us, it would be too new to say it's transformative. But again, there are advantages to that we don't have today. Clearly, it doesn't exist because there aren't advantages. And technology is a wonderful thing, where it would be something that would be nice to have at one time. It becomes something you have to have in the future. So you have to be sensitive, you have to be aware, you have to be tied in. Please forgive me, my wife's phone's ringing in the background.
All good.
That's working from home, right? So I think that it's going to become part and parcel to our infrastructure. And as we grow and as the technology demands really become even more weighty, having that ability to offload that storage capability is going to become important.
Yep. A question that relates, this is from Mark, a question that relates to a company that actually, one of these anyway, is headquartered here. What are your thoughts on some of the startups that are changing how people buy and sell homes, like OfferPad or Open Door or any of those companies?
So I think that that's an interesting idea. I'm concerned that they'll all go out of business in a market correction, right? So as long as properties are rising, they can't get hurt. So as the value of properties goes up, and they buy people's homes and then sell them, that's all great, right? But when property values level off or decline, I think you'll find that that doesn't persist. And you'll see that it'll work in parts of the country, not work in others. And I think that it can be a really dicey proposition. It's kind of like when everybody jumps into fix and flip, and you have when my eye doctor told me he was going to invest in real estate and flip some properties, and that's how he was going to pay for his retirement. I said, well, I'm going to open up a store and I'm going to inspect eyes and maybe provide them with glasses, because if you're qualified to do that, I'm qualified to do this. When it's good and property values are going up, it's easy. It's when property values correct and it's a problem that we'll see the crap hit the fan, I think.
Right. You talked earlier about the way you communicated to your employees, that you said, work from home if you're, feeling unsafe, or, all the conversations that you had. Were there other things, Stan, that you had to prioritize differently when this started to drag on than you originally thought you were going to have to prioritize?
No, actually, we embraced it and just charged forward. This was who we were, and this is how we were. And the more we did it and the more success we had, the more we wanted to do it and the more of it we wanted to do. And so we did $5 billion, $7 billion, $10 billion, $12 billion, $15 billion in a month of new originations. That's 75,000 new customers in a month, which is just a huge number of mortgages, right? It's, in the context of what we do, they're very large numbers. In a very fractured business, our industry will do, I guess, $4 trillion this year. We'll probably do 100 and some odd billion. So it's a pretty fractured business. But think of all the banks there are in the world that do mortgages, right? And all the mortgage companies. So even though nobody has really more than 8 or 9% of the marketplace, maybe 10, the few percent that we have, there's a lot of people that aren't our customers, and we're really busy. So it's hard to imagine capturing a really big percentage of the marketplace.
Right. Another question from the attendees, from Michael. You've successfully managed a tremendous amount of change in your career. What change management words of wisdom can you share with us today?
Embrace change. So some people think change is bad. Change is not the enemy. Some people think different is worse. And the truth is that if you don't embrace change, you have to fail, because the world is going to change with or without you. If a casual observer can come to that conclusion over the last 10 years, just think about all the things that have changed. We already talked about the internet and cell phones and connectivity and on and on and on. And if you go longer than 10 years, I remember we were talking before about when we got a line of memory on our brother's typewriter. We thought that was a big deal. I remember correctotype being a technological advancement. So fax machines being the latest, greatest machine, uh, copy machines dominating huge chunks of office space, and advanced office filing systems that took up thousands of square feet to retain folders of paper. So things change. Technology and times will move with or without you. So you have to embrace change. And by the
Yeah.
way, um, change allows you to embrace different risks. We live in an economic cycle. So everything that happens to us kind of goes around and around like a merry-go-round. You know, assets go up in value, assets come down in value, credit cycles get tighter, credit cycles get looser, volumes move around. And that's true pretty much across the entire economy. And we could break down a lot of different businesses based on the economic cycles. And since it's cyclical in nature, the risks move. So which risk you're managing to today may not be the same risk that you're managing to tomorrow. So just from the cyclicality of our industry, change is built in. It's part of what we do, just like you wear different clothes in the winter than you wear in the summer, right? So if you don't embrace that reality, you're going to look pretty silly walking around in a parka in July in New Jersey. So I think you have to embrace change and recognize it's part of your life on a daily basis.
Yeah. Question from Abdel. What North Star are you using to measure process improvement success? Saving time or perfect order concept?
So when I think of process improvement, I think of cost. So I manage to low cost to produce, and I know what it costs me to produce, and I know what automation does to the cost of production. I also use volumes, right? So not only, so you're trading cost of technology for cost of personnel. So where you're investing in technology, you're getting long-term use because it doesn't get tired. I guess it does to a certain degree, but it doesn't get tired like a person gets tired. So if you can get greater productivity out of each person, your personnel costs go down. And by the way, you can finance technology, can't really finance people. You know, it's pretty easy to invest in technology to drive the cost of productivity down. And we've done that really successfully. It's really empowered us tremendously.
Nice. A question from Kendall. Can you tell us about a time as CEO that it was difficult to embrace change because of the risk or potential risk that was involved for the company?
I can't remember a time where I had the option to not embrace change.
Okay.
You know, change isn't just technology. I mean, change is change, right? Some change you move towards, and some change moves towards you. You're not always the captain of your own fate. You have to embrace change because you don't have a choice. You know, so I think about it like this: you're either growing or dying. You know, it's kind of going one way or the other. You're either living or you're getting killed, right? So if your choice is live or get killed, you're going to embrace the change to live. If you have to grow to live, you're going to embrace the change to grow. If you're going to have to be more efficient, you're going to embrace the change to become more efficient. We had a huge amount of compliance change and regulatory responsibility shift coming out of the crisis in like 2010 and 11 and 12 that we didn't really wish for. We thought we were doing a pretty good job before that, but the crisis screamed to the world that we need somebody to blame, even though the people whose fault it was were all out of business. So the people that caused the blame were all out of business, but the world needed a scapegoat, so the government blamed the survivors. Why not? Right? So they extracted an awful lot of money from us in fees and charges to deal with the issue. So we had to embrace a change in compliance because the rules of the road changed. And
Right.
sometimes you don't dictate change, change dictates you. And we had to change all of our compliance technology to be able to stay in the game. So I'd love to say that I tried to avoid embracing change because sometimes you're going to change slower than others based on economics, but sometimes you don't have a choice.
Right. That's a great answer. Question from Gary, can you elaborate on how your style of embracing the challenge and charging forward, and how you aligned your leadership team to that style and outlook as well?
Can you repeat that? I lost one of the words that told me what you were asking.
Yeah, he said, can you elaborate on how your style of embracing the challenge or charging forward, and how you aligned your leadership team to that style and outlook? I think it was a comment you made earlier.
I got it. So it was the charging forward part that confused me. So that, you know, I believe that I lead and my management team translates what I tell them to everybody else. And when I speak to a large group of people, I try and speak in more general terms. And then I try and coach up the management team to lead through the specifics. So I think it starts with a vision, and then you have to turn that vision into maybe an idea and then a vision, and then you have to turn that vision into a strategy, and then you have to be able to execute that strategy and devise tactics, and then you have to convert those tactics into tasks. So you have to go all the way through that chain of events to make sure that what you think is happening does happening. And then you have to monitor the outcomes of the efforts in the tasks through the tactics, executing the strategy to make sure that every base got touched and every chore got completed, so that when you weave that fabric together, you see the vision that you imagined in the first place. That's kind of a vast oversimplification, but what I'm telling you is you got to watch the watchers, and then you have to have somebody watch the watchers of the watchers. So, trust but verify, and stay on top of your game, and make sure that your strategy has been converted to reasonable tactics, and those tactics are inclusive.
Right. We still have a lot of questions, and we have like 7 minutes left. So I do want to ask you one as an entrepreneur myself. But being an entrepreneur, when people come to you during economies like this or in 2009 and say, I'm thinking about starting my own business, what is your recommendation to them?
So it's very nice to start your own business. Good luck. Are you prepared to start your own business? Are you capitalized properly? Do you know that there's demand for your idea? If we just go back to my last answer, do you have an idea? Is it economically viable? Have you converted that idea into a vision? Have you proven that that vision is marketable? Can you convert that vision into a strategy, and then convert that strategy into tactics and tasks? And can you make sure that all happens and creates an economic outcome that you can live with? So if you've done all of those things, have at it. And if it works in today's environment, I think that's great. If you haven't done all of those things, maybe you should think again.
Yeah.
It's formulaic, right? If you haven't touched all of those bases on a totally inclusive forum, how can you possibly succeed? You're not guaranteeing the outcome. You're not making the difference. You're hoping that the world will accept you, and that's a crappy plan.
Yep. Yeah, and you have to be very honest with people when they have a crappy plan, I think.
Well, if they have a crappy plan,
it's a hard thing to do.
They're going to get honest with themselves pretty fast.
That's very true. What was your worst this question is from Chris. What was your worst investment?
Start again.
Can you hear me? Okay.
Yeah.
Question from Chris. What was your worst investment, and how did it shape future investments?
So I've made a lot of bad investments. Uh, you know, and you know, you make investments. If you're in business, you make investments every day. You're investing your time, you're investing your money, you're investing your energy, you're investing your intellect, you're investing a lot of things. One of the big change, you know, so I guess if you're talking about as an entrepreneur, um, well, my worst investment was I bought a TV in a box from a guy on a street with no TV in the box. So that was probably my worst investment. And I thought I was getting a hell of a deal, but it was a very expensive box at the time. That was probably my worst investment. And I learned not to buy stuff off of guys in the street that sounded like they had a great deal. And you know that, and I think the lesson learned from that is you should be cautious and make sure that you're getting what you're buying. And that's something that I exercise every single day, right? You don't want to sell your cow for a bag of beans, but you're going to make investments that work. And if you're not putting yourself out there and you're not at risk and you're not trying things, you're not learning whether you have good ideas or not. You're not learning whether you can grow or not. You have to fail to succeed. That whole story I just told about ideas and visions and strategies, well, the secret is testing things at the idea and vision stage so that you don't make a tragedy out of strategy and tactics and tasks, right? So you want to learn early before you spend a whole bunch of money, not late because you thought you had a good idea and you ended up having a crappy plan. I think you have to test. You hear that from marketing guys all the time. And I like to see people test with little bets rather than big bets, and then come back to me and say, here's the results, and this is how it worked, and this is why it's going to work. And not only that, there's always a difference between a test and scale. So things may work on a small scale where it's really controlled in the lab, you know, the idea proves, it looks like it's got legs, and then you go to scale it and it goes to hell in a handbasket. Because some things don't scale as well as others. And that's, you know, a different problem. So you have to be able to try it, build a working model, test the model, work the model, scale the model, and then scale the business, and make sure that you don't deteriorate your economic outcomes. I don't know if I answered the question he was looking for, but that's kind of my take.
Yeah, I will know afterwards. And I think you probably did, because I thought it was a great answer. And I don't know what year that was you bought the TV, but I bought a video camera from the exact same guy in New York City. That was a brick. So he's got a pretty good business model going. Question from Gary: do you see a decline in commercial real estate values over the next 3 to 5 years resulting from COVID, and your own observations regarding the remote workforce?
Well, two different questions, right? And the one on commercial real estate is yikes. Who the hell knows? Because, so I'll give you an example. My use. So we had space for, you know, 5, 6, 7,000 people, hundreds of thousands of square feet of space. And we packed them in really tight. If we have to be social distanced, we don't have enough space for the number of people that we have today if everybody went back to work. So maybe we don't have enough commercial real estate. Or maybe nobody ever goes back into an office or works again. And then we have way too much commercial real estate. And it depends what kind of commercial real estate you're talking about. I think there's tremendous opportunities in distribution centers. Places like Amazon are just exploding, and they're investing in places that are staging areas for their distribution. That kind of commercial real estate's great. Multifamily housing. The government has already stated that they want to improve housing. They want to improve the housing for poor people and provide more housing. They're going to extend Section 8 and do a lot of things to help with rental income. So I think multifamily housing will expand further. but malls, probably not so good. Office, dicey. Um, Retail space. Is anybody ever going to go to a restaurant again? Are there going to be a restaurant still in business? I think there's a lot of questions, and it's too soon to have answers. Maybe that stuff is a bargain. Maybe the best investment is real retail, restaurant space, and it's going to come back with a vengeance. Maybe the best investment is a baseball team, and people are going to show up in droves because they haven't been to a ball game in a long time. It's really too soon to tell. We don't know how people are going to respond to this thing yet, and that's kind of the way I'm playing it by ear a little bit.
Yeah. Well, Stan, I want to be mindful of your time, and we've gotten a lot of comments and a lot of thank yous for your time, and I truly appreciate it. Your team, Audrey and Janet, I want to thank them as well for making this all come together. And Stan, thank you again so much for being here with us today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me. It's really been a pleasure. I appreciate the chance to ramble and rant a little bit.
No, you're an amazing leader. It's no wonder, as Gary said, it's no wonder you are as successful and your organization is as successful as it is. So I thank you again.
Thanks for having me. Take care.
Take care, Stan.